This is the World According to Zig podcast for September 1st, 2019. My name is John Ziegler. I'm the host of the show where you can still get the truth about the news of the day from a conservative perspective in this world turned upside down. Our website is Free Speech Broadcasting. That's where you can find all of the past episodes of the World According to Zig podcast, as well as my most recent articles, including the 8-part series that I just completed for Mediate about the history of the news media's decline in credibility and the rise of Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States of America. As is always the case, I also urge you to check out the other podcast that I do, the Individual One podcast, which deals directly with the presidency of Donald Trump. So make sure you go and check that out. You can do so via freespeechbroadcasting.com and my Twitter feed, which is at Zygmunt Freud. Lots to get to on this episode of the World According to Zig podcast, the latest in the never-ending Leaving Neverland saga, including what Dave Chappelle did to blow up the narrative this week. A major update on my quest for the truth to finally come out in the so-called Penn State scandal. I had to tell you about me going through sexual harassment training as part of an obligatory legal circumstance regarding my job at Mediate, having nothing to do with me having created the situation to be forced to do it. This is mandatory for all people who work there, but it was an extraordinary experience and one that I have to share with you. Also, the revelation this week about former Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim pitcher Tyler Skaggs and how he ended up dying, and how I think this tells an awful lot about some of the problems we have in evaluating how someone dies and whether or not they ought to be a hero. The start of college football. We got Hurricane Darian bearing down on Florida, and new warnings about global warming. So we'll get to all that, but we'll start, as we have much of this year, with this amazing story of the syndicated film Leaving Neverland. We were at the forefront of deconstructing what is clearly a fantasy film about two allegations against Michael Jackson for child sex abuse by Wade Robson and by James Safechuck. And there was a major development this week. In fact, might be the most major development. And the fact that it's such a big deal, I think, forgetting whether you even care at all about Michael Jackson or Leaving Neverland, it might tell us a lot about our society and where we are headed, specifically with regard to our media. And I'll explain why in a moment. It'll be obvious as we go through this. But what I'm referring to is some statements made by comedian Dave Chappelle, a legendary black comedian who just came out with a brand new Netflix special. And Chappelle, he's brilliant. He's gone through some personal turmoil. He has always been a fan of Jackson and a sometimes defender of Jackson. And in this Netflix special, he really lets it all hang out with regard to his views on Leaving Neverland. And the bottom line is he does not believe the accusers. And he makes it very clear, although there's some in the media that are still trying to pretend that that's not really what he meant, although he couldn't be more clear. But that's how desperate the news media is to hold on to their narrative. They don't want to have anybody who is famous say anything that disrupts this idea that they were right to blindly and in a knee-jerk rush to judgment fashion believe this 4-hour fantasy film that Dan Reed put out on HBO. So Dave Chappelle does his Netflix special, and he goes on for several minutes about Leaving Neverland, the allegations against Michael Jackson. Now, he does so in a way that at times is funny, at times is really very crude. We're not going to play the whole bit, but there's two key elements. The one that's gotten the most publicity is where he just flat out says he does not believe those who are accusing Michael Jackson in Leaving Neverland, and he does so in about as clear-cut a way as possible. And here's what that sounded like.
Michael Jackson has been dead for 10 years, and this has 2 new cases. I'm going to say something that I'm not allowed to say. But I got to be real. I don't believe these motherfuckers. I do not believe it. let me qualify the statement. I am what's known on the streets as a victim blamer. You know what I mean? If somebody come up to me like, Dave, Chris Brown just beat up Rihanna. I'll be like, well, what did she do? Dave, Michael Jackson was molesting children. Well, what were those kids wearing at the time? I don't think he did it.
All right, now, it's important to understand how comedy is done, especially Dave Chappelle's comedy. It is my interpretation that the very beginning of that clip is him expressing his editorial opinion that he does not believe them. He is confident that they are lying. And it seems to me as if he's done some thinking and maybe some research about this to come to that conclusion. The part in the middle where he jokes about Rihanna and basically makes it sound like, well, even if Michael Jackson did do it, maybe it's not his fault because these kids, hilariously, I guess, in his mind, might have been wearing something provocative. It is that part that some people have latched on to say, well, wait a minute, Dave Chappelle isn't saying that Michael Jackson's innocent. He's saying that even if he did it, it doesn't matter. No. You need to separate what is the substantive real opinion part with what is him doing comedy. He sets up the comedy part by giving his very controversial opinion, which is against the conventional wisdom. And we know that because he ends that clip by saying, I don't think he did it. So that's the part where all right, he's making it very clear. He's clarifying, hey, look, I just did a comedy bit based upon the notion that this didn't happen, and I'm gonna bookend the comedy with my opinion up front, and then I'm gonna once again verify I don't think he did it. And that couldn't be more clear. Although, again, some in the media are trying to pretend that that's not really what he said or that that's not what he really meant, including Dan Reed, the director. I'll get to that and his reaction momentarily. Dan Reed decided to focus on another clip from this Dave Chappelle Netflix documentary where Dave Chappelle starts to joke about the concept of a boy being molested by Michael Jackson at the height of his fame, where he was the most famous person in the world, and it probably wasn't even close. And to me, this is pretty obvious what Chappelle is doing, but maybe it needs a little bit of setup for those that aren't that bright, like Dan Reed. And the reality is he's exposing the absurdity. He's making fun of the absurdity. He's not making fun of child sexual abuse. He's making fun of the absurdity that someone at this age, at this time period, could be molested by Michael Jackson and never tell anybody about it. And here's what that sounded like. The audio is not quite as good because we had to lift this from Twitter. Was it from Twitter? Yeah, we lifted it from Twitter because Netflix has been very aggressive in knocking down any YouTube videos of Dave Chappelle's special. But this is Dave Chappelle mocking the idea that a boy could be molested by Michael Jackson in this way and never mention this to anybody for many, 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 many years.
I know more than half the people in this room have been molested in their lives. But it wasn't no goddamn Michael Jackson, was it? This kid got his dick sucked by the king of pop. All we did is offer Thanksgivings for the rest of our lives. You know how good it must have felt to go to school the next day after that shit? Hey, Billy, how was the weekend? How was my weekend? Michael Jackson sucks my dick. And that was my first sexual experience. If I'm starting here, then sky's the limit. I know it seems harsh, but man, somebody's got to teach these kids. There's no such thing as a free trip to Hawaii. And he's gonna want to look at your butthole or something. You know why I don't believe it? You know why I don't believe it? Because if Michael Jackson's out here doing all this molesting, then why not Macaulay Culkin? Macaulay Culkin said in an interview that Michael Jackson never did anything inappropriate with him or even around him. Think about that shit. You know, I'm not a pedophile. But if I was, Macaulay Culkin's the first kid I'm fucking, I'll tell you that right now. I'd be a goddamn hero. Hey, that guy over there fucked the kid from Home Alone. And you know how hard he is to catch.
All right, so that's the essence of the Dave Chappelle Netflix comedy special. Believe it or not, we didn't even play for you the crudest elements of that. And again, it's important to point out that what Chappelle is doing there, he is using the Michael Jackson allegations as a way of doing a comedy bit while bookending it with his actual real opinions, making it very clear once again there that he does not believe this and he does not believe these lying MFers. Now, this had a major impact on the public narrative. Now, it didn't get massive media publicity, but it certainly was well known within the entertainment community. And I don't know for sure, but this had to have helped. But they had the MTV Music Awards this week, and the Dave Chappelle comments had already been known on social media, and it had to have helped the fact that numerous artists were interviewed, I believe by Yahoo, it was by Yahoo News, on the red carpet of the MTV Music Awards, and universally, all of them, and most of them were black artists, were supporting Michael Jackson, and some were even going as far as Dave Chappelle to call these guys liars and doing so with profanity. And I talk about this a lot in every story. People need cover to tell an unpopular or dangerous, toxic truth. And Dave Chappelle has provided cover, at least within elements of the entertainment industry. And that matters. And we're living in this very strange age, and I'm not happy about this because I wish that we didn't have to rely on entertainers to be the ones that actually tell us unpopular truths. But the news media will no longer do this. The news media, if a story is too toxic, no matter what the truth really is, they're never going to take that chance because they have too much to lose and nothing really to gain, especially if there's not a massive audience for the truth. Now, in this case, there is a massive audience for the truth because Michael Jackson fans are millions strong, and they have been adamant that he is innocent, and so they're starving for the truth. So this situation is slightly different than the norm and some others that I've been involved with, including the Penn State case. But Chappelle gives cover to people. People gravitate towards entertainers, and it's now entertainers who have more influence oftentimes, in what people are going to feel is a respectable opinion and what they feel provides them cover to say themselves something that they don't perceive to be unpopular. You know, in a moment, I'm going to talk about the fact that there's a new book coming out by Malcolm Gladwell that in a rational world vindicates all of my work on the Penn State Joe Paterno, Jerry Sandusky case. And in a rational world, that's exactly what you would want because Malcolm Gladwell is an intellectual. He's highly respected, even within the media, although now he's starting to get a little bit of media blowback, but he's well-read, millions of readers, a very popular podcast, very well-respected, and somebody, if he says, look, this controversial opinion is not only respectable, but it looks like it's right, then that should have weight. Well, it's awesome that Malcolm Gladwell is doing this. We'll see how awesome it is maybe in the next couple of weeks. But the reality is, you know what? As nice as it is for Malcolm Gladwell to take a look at my work and go, look, Ziegler's onto something here, frankly, it would have more impact if Kim Kardashian did it. If Kim Kardashian tweeted that I'm right about Penn State, Joe Paterno, and Jerry Sandusky, and if, God forbid, it was retweeted by Donald Trump, that would have way, way more impact than anything that's going to happen with the Malcolm Gladwell book. And that's pathetic, but that's the reality, because celebrity is everything in this day and age. And Dave Chappelle is a celebrity, and Dave Chappelle has provided cover for other people to give their real opinions, which for most people who have looked into this and who have gotten over their initial emotional reaction and looked at the facts, they look at it and go, wait a minute, this is all bullshit. There's no reality here. There's no evidence here. It doesn't make any damn sense. And that second clip we played from Chappelle is really about how little sense this makes. There's so many things about the allegations that do not add up. But the idea that Wade Robson, a guy who has been interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of times by major outlets, including on Jimmy Kimmel on ABC, in the years after his abuse, and never said anything. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel joked with Wade Robson about where Michael Jackson touched him, and he laughed because it was a joke. It was a joke. This was on national television. And now we're supposed to believe all these years later that Wade Robson was abused for 7 years from the age of 7 to 14, even though it doesn't appear as if he was even in this country until the age of 9, and even though during several of those key years he was dating Brandy Jackson because Michael Jackson had set Wade Robson up with Brandy, who is Michael Jackson's niece, and they dated for 7 frickin' years. I mean, come on, people. Really? Come on.
And not be serious.
I mean, there's no way. It just didn't happen. It's just
flat out ridiculous.
That's what it is. And Dave Chappelle understands this. Dave Chappelle understands it and has had the balls to actually say it, and I think it's had an impact. Now, how much of an impact, I don't know. Dan Reed desperately tried to latch on to the last bastion, as did Wade Robson. The last bastion of a false accuser is, instead of defending your accusation, is to attack those who are calling you out on the basis of how dare you question a child sex abuse victim. How dare you question a victim? Well, wait a minute. You didn't prove that you were a victim first. So you're going to play that card? When you play that card with no evidence, now I know you're desperate and you're lying, because that's all you have. And Reed did it with regard to the second clip we played from Chappelle. And I don't know, with Reed, you never know. Is he this dumb or is he this desperate, or maybe it's both? But the idea that Reed didn't understand that Chappelle was not mocking child sex abuse victims, but instead was mocking the idea that a boy could be molested by Michael frickin' Jackson at that age and never tell anybody anything of any sort, is mind-blowing. I mean, Reed is a dumb guy. So I don't know if he was lying or if he's just that dumb, but he actually tweeted out a clip. Now, this was interesting that he tweeted out that second clip on YouTube. It was interesting because Reed actually created a YouTube account in order to tweet out this video clip, which he mischaracterized, right? Well, what's interesting about this is Netflix forced him to take it down. The video got deleted from YouTube that Dan Reed had created and tweeted out. Now, what's interesting about this is Dan Reed's a filmmaker. So here he is violating Netflix's copyright rights in a way where Netflix ends up taking it down. And what's really ironic and telling is that Leaving Neverland has done the same damn thing with other people. They have been incredibly aggressive, I believe inappropriately so, in taking down YouTube clips about Leaving Neverland, because with Leaving Neverland, there's a fair use issue, because this is a public news topic that people are commenting on. And that is a loophole within the copyright laws. And so Dan Reed, once again, showing himself to be a hypocrite, showing himself to be a moron, and frankly, I also think showing himself to be deceitful and a liar. So those who have followed this know that this whole thing has fallen apart. The other thing that Chappelle did was, bizarrely, he gave the estate of Michael Jackson some more cover to really go after Wade Robson. They really took off the gloves this week. I mean, they went so far as to not just call Wade Robson a liar, but also to call him a lousy choreographer and said, boy, it's too bad you weren't better. We would have hired you for our Cirque du Soleil show. Too bad you didn't get the gig and you decided again to sue us. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what the Jackson estate said. And I'm like, wow, what took so long? Because that was fantastic. And clearly they believe that the Chappelle comments have opened an opportunity for them. But Robson's reaction is maybe the most absurd of all, because Robson has also wrapped himself in the covering blanket of being a sex abuse victim. How dare you? He said, I don't care that Dave Chappelle doesn't believe me, but it's outrageous that he would attack child sex abuse victims. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty darn close. Okay, that would be suspicious under the best of circumstances, but under these set of facts, that's outrageous, because Wade Robson has no foot, not one foot, not a toe to stand on when it comes to the issue of defending the rights of child sex abuse victims. Because if he's telling the truth, which he's not, but if he were telling the truth, he would be the first person we would point to and go, wow, you really let down all of the victims of Michael Jackson. Because obviously if he did this once, he did it way more than once, which he did not, in my very strong opinion. But if the narrative is remotely true, then Wade Robson, when he testified as Michael Jackson's first defense witness at his 2005 trial where he was acquitted of all 14 charges, that was the moment when Wade Robson, as an adult, as an experienced adult who had major high-profile sexual affairs with women, including Britney Spears, when he went in front of God and everybody, took an oath, and then, based upon his current testimony, lied blatantly and strongly that he was abused, that he was not abused by Michael Jackson, that prevented the 2005 accuser from getting a fair trial. And it allowed Michael Jackson to go scot-free. So Wade Robson has no remotely logical toe to stand on when it comes to this issue of defending the victims of child sex abuse. And yet that's all he has, because he can't defend the record. He can't defend the facts. He can't defend the timeline. He can't defend anything. And he's not being forced to, because the media knows this isn't true. But they want this to go away. They're just like, this is one of those crimes better left unsolved, really, as they might say in This Is Spinal Tap. That's where we are on this. All right. Let's just move on, people. Move on. Nothing to see here. Yeah. We spent several weeks destroying a dead man's character and legacy and defaming him, but and we were probably wrong. But we're not going to admit we were wrong, and we're just going to pretend this never really happened. So that's where I see this going right now. But the momentum is definitely on the side of the truth.